Hello, Grayson County. We have been put in a pretty infuriating situation. A lot of us are here because of the school board's mask mandate that they imposed on our schools this past week. We had some reason for getting caught off guard. We thought that our governor had this covered. But our school board made the decision to defy the governor. And then they have extended that defiance to defy the Texas Supreme Court that ruled in favor of the governor on Thursday. And now they're getting ready to blow some of our skyrocketing property taxes on legal battles with the Attorney General. Our schools like to brag about it being independent school districts, but there's a remarkable similarity in the scripts that we're seeing from the schools around the state as they continue their defiance. Why are our schools digging in so hard to push what everybody realizes are ineffective masks on the portion of the population that is practically invulnerable to this virus? They want to say that it's about health, but it really looks like it has more to do with our schools just engaging in one more example of dragging our kids into politics. Whether it's critical race theory, whether it's like the example we saw in Aledo Independent School District this past week of a teacher bogging her class down in gender pronoun discussions on opening day of school. Or it's the example that we saw of the teacher getting fired in Utah because she got caught on a video telling her kids openly to reject their parents in favor of the ideologies that she was pushing on her class. There is way too much emphasis on ideology in our public schools today, and it's time for it to stop. The schools may think that they are the cornerstone of society, but the nuclear family is the proper owner of that title. Parents have the primary responsibility to be the health, welfare, moral upbringing, and educators of their children. Public school was never intended to be in direct competition with parents for their kids. Some of the things that we see in public schools today are absolutely shocking. There is no limit to what they will talk to your kids about. Nothing is too personal, nothing is too intimate. They will talk to them one-on-one, they will talk to them in groups with their friends about things that are creepy. Things that, if they happened in any other context, would be criminal. Unfortunately, we're at a point on the curve where we are not being responsible if we think that the things that we see going around Texas or going around the country aren't going to happen in my school or your school. Grayson County Conservatives is putting together a school liaison program. We're looking for volunteers to attend school board meetings, parent-teacher organizations, to help with transparency for what's going on in our schools, to make sure that we're never surprised by something like what Sherman Independent School District School Board did this past week. If you're interested in getting more information or signing up for that program, just see somebody at the table back there and ask questions, provide your information. But we have to get serious about not just talking about these issues. We have to get engaged. We have to be vigilant. We've already heard a couple of people mention that the mask issue is not really about health. I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody here. The masks have been shown not to be effective. The populations in our schools have been shown not to be a risk population. If it was just some harmless thing that the schools were asking our kids to do, we might have a different discussion. But it's not harmless. They are out of bounds. On the U.S. government's National Institutes of Health website, there is a paper that collected data from multiple studies going back well before the COVID epidemic that talks about the adverse effects of masks. It's not a secret to the government, it's not a secret to school administrators, it's not a secret to the medical community. I'm going to just read through a very representative sample of some of the things from that study. This is a very small portion of what is in the document on the government's own website. It's broken down by the effects, by the different ways that masks affect the kids or affect people in general. Physiological effects. A study showed elevated CO2 levels after 30 minutes in healthy 18 to 40-year-olds wearing surgical masks. A study showed increased rebreathing of CO2 and statistically significant drop in oxygen saturation. Another study, surgical and N95 masks increased heart rate, feeling of exhaustion, sensation of heat, and itching due to moisture penetration after only 90 minutes of physical activity. An observational study of 20 to 50-year-old nurses wearing N95 masks resulted in side effects of breathing difficulties, headaches, drowsiness, decreased oxygen saturation, and increase in heart rates. Then there are neurological side effects. Neurologists from Israel, the UK, the US found masks unsuitable for epileptics due to triggering hyperventilation. Use of masks significantly increased respiratory rate by 15 to 20%. A study by physicians in New York found wearing of surgical and N95 masks caused impaired cognition and headaches in 71% of 343 participants in the study. Headaches in 30% after just an hour. 82% of 21 to 35-year-old N95 mask wearers experienced headaches up to 4 times a day in a study where participants wore the mask for 6 hours a day for 18 days in a 30-day period. How much time are our kids spending in these masks? Then there are psychological side effects and dangers. Studies have associated the wearing of surgical masks and N95 masks with suppressed anger, subconscious distraction, stress, depressive self-expressions, reduced participation, and social withdrawal. Over 50% of mask wearers in the study had at least mild depressive feelings. There are psychiatric effects: increased claustrophobia, increased panic attacks, decrease in reaction time. Dermatological side effects: skin becomes more susceptible to infections and acne. A study demonstrated disturbed barrier function of the skin after only 4 hours in surgical and N95 masks. Ear, nose, throat, and dental side effects. There are dental community reports of encountering mask mouth. They've come up with a name for a new problem. Fungal infestations of mucous membranes, inflammation of the lips, plaque, dry mouth. So the report goes on to list other categories: social side effects, occupational medicine side effects, microbiological consequences, self-contamination. This is just a very limited representative sample of what was in the paper. Regarding kids, it goes on to say that it can be assumed that the potential adverse mask effects described for adults are all the more valid for children. Special attention must be paid to the respiration of children, which represents a critical and vulnerable physiological variable due to higher oxygen demand, increased hypoxia susceptibility, lower respiratory reserve, and smaller airways. And on top of all of that, most of our kids are wearing adult masks that don't really fit them. The masks that are marketed for kids are simply adult masks that have been miniaturized. There's been no studies or approval specifically for that application. None. It's time to leave the kids out of the politics. If Sherman ISD has a problem with Governor Abbott, they need to take that problem up with Governor Abbott and leave the kids out of it until you settle your own issues. Leave the kids alone.